Usually, when we consider the concept of a heist, we operate with a very traditional, I guess, highly cinematic mental model.
Right, like a movie scene.
Yeah, exactly. We picture, a masked figure bypassing a vault door, or someone discreetly lifting a physical object like a wallet, a painting, a TV, while the victim is looking the other way.
A tangible loss.
Right. The defining characteristic of that kind of theft is its visibility. The loss is immediate, it's measurable, and there's a physical void where the asset used to be. You can literally point to the empty space on the wall and say, something was taken from me.
And that tangibility is what allows us to process the violation. Right? I mean, we have legal frameworks, police reports, and insurance policies that are specifically built around the loss of physical property.
Yeah.
But the paradigm of theft it's evolved considerably. And the most sophisticated extraction happening today doesn't target physical assets at all.
Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are examining a massive, highly coordinated extraction of resources that is occurring right now, and it's impacting nearly every single person operating in the modern economy.
Absolutely every.
Only the asset being systematically strip-mined isn't stored in a bank vault or a living room. It's the cognitive capacity inside your own head.
It really is the defining invisible crisis of our era, the systematic, algorithmic theft of human focus. And I think the most insidious part is that we are largely compliant participants in the whole process.
We hand it over willingly, so welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to tear down the mechanics of this crisis and provide you with a blueprint for rescuing your attention span.
Which we desperately need.
We really do. We're pulling from a pretty dense stack of research today, historical notes, neurobiological analyses, all detailing this concept of the attention economy and the practice of deep work.
Yeah, and we're going to deconstruct not just the technological environment that surrounds us, but, and this is key, the underlying biological vulnerabilities that this environment actively exploits.
It's hacking our brains, basically.
Precisely. This is fundamentally about reclaiming the architecture of how you perceive reality and ultimately how you generate value.
So let me pose a scenario to you, the listener, and I want you to honestly evaluate how closely this mirrors your baseline reality.
I bet it's going to be very close for a lot of people.
Oh, almost certainly. Okay, so you sit down at your desk at, say, 8:30 a.m. From that exact moment until 5:00 p.m., you are in a state of frantic, relentless motion.
Just go, go, go.
Right, you're rapidly firing off emails, clearing out your Slack or Teams queue, jumping into back-to-back virtual stand-ups, managing these little micro-crises, and basically functioning as a highly reactive router of information.
Just a human switchboard.
Yes, a human switchboard. Yet, when 5:00 p.m. finally hits, you experience this profound, bone-deep exhaustion. You look at your actual core deliverables, the big things you needed to do, and you realize you accomplished functionally nothing of substance.
It's such a common feeling. And if that scenario resonates with you, the most critical piece of context you need to absorb right now is that this is a predictable, engineered outcome.
Engineered?
Yes, engineered. That specific sensation of exhausted, unproductive busyness.
No.
It is not a personal failure of willpower.
You're not just lazy.
No, you have not lost your edge. You are operating within an ecosystem that has been precision engineered over the last 2 decades to produce exactly that neurological state.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we want to reverse engineer a solution, we have to thoroughly understand the mechanics of the trap we're in. The sources we're looking at refer to this ecosystem as the attention economy. But we aren't just talking about the mere presence of distractions, right? Like a noisy office or a ringing telephone. We're talking about an environment built to completely bypass your executive function and hijack your neurobiology at the basis level.
And the distinction between a distraction and a hijacking it's really vital here. If we look at the evolution of consumer tech platforms, particularly around, say, the late 2000s, there was a fundamental pivot.
What kind of pivot?
Well, the tech industry stopped building tools. A tool is something you pick up, use it for a specific purpose, and then you put it down.
That calculator.
Exactly. They stopped building tools and started building traps. The companies designing your feeds, your communication software, your mobile operating systems, they employ vast teams of behavioral psychologists.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and their explicit mandate is to map the human brain's reward pathways. They design interfaces that exploit our primal evolutionary drives for novelty and social validation.
So they are essentially weaponizing the very survival mechanisms that kept our ancestors alive on the savannah.
Precisely. And the core mechanism they utilize It's actually pulled straight from mid-20th century behavioral psychology.
The Skinner box stuff, right?
Yes, exactly. The operant conditioning chamber, developed by B.F. Skinner. So Skinner found that if you reward an animal, let's say a pigeon, with food, every single time it presses a lever, the animal learns the association.
Right. Press lever, get food.
But it only presses the lever when it's actively hungry. The behavior is very predictable and finite.
Because the reward is guaranteed, right? So the mystery is gone. The brain calculates the exact return on investment and just regulates its behavior accordingly.
Exactly. But, and this is where it gets dark, if you introduce what's called a variable ratio schedule.
Variable ratio schedule. Okay.
Meaning the pigeon presses the lever and sometimes gets nothing, sometimes gets one little pellet, and occasionally gets a massive jackpot of food. The animal's behavior changes dramatically.
Because they don't know what's coming.
Right. The unpredictability causes a massive spike in dopamine in the brain's reward center, specifically the ventral tegmental area. And the pigeon will press the lever obsessively, literally to the point of physical exhaustion, simply chasing the uncertainty.
Wow. And when we transpose that onto our current digital infrastructure, our devices are really just highly polished glass and aluminum Skinner boxes.
That's exactly what they are.
I mean, the pull to refresh motion on a social feed that is the physical equivalent of pulling a slot machine lever.
It's identical. The entire notification infrastructure is built on this variable ratio schedule. The uncertainty itself is the engine of the addiction.
So when a device vibrates or, a red badge appears on an app, the prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of the brain, it doesn't get to evaluate the importance of the notification first.
No, it's bypassed entirely.
The dopamine spike happens in anticipation. We don't know if that ping is just an automated newsletter or an urgent request from a client or, a text from a friend.
And that anticipatory spike creates an incredibly powerful psychological compulsion. It becomes a biological imperative to resolve the uncertainty.
You just have to know.
Right, your brain perceives the unresolved notification as an open loop, like a minor threat to your situational awareness. So every single ping drags your attention away from your current cognitive state and forces you to pull the lever to close the loop.
It is a relentless barrage. But I want to introduce a little friction into this argument here.
Sure, go ahead.
Because in the reality of the modern hyper-connected workplace, particularly if you're in a client-facing role or a rapid deployment team, this constant responsiveness is not just a bad habit, right? It's actively incentivized.
Oh, absolutely.
If a client emails me with a major issue and I wait 3 hours to respond because I'm protecting my focus, I might lose that client. I mean, in many sectors, spinning 50 plates and acting as a high-speed router of information is literally the core competency of the job. Are we really just supposed to abandon that?
Well, that is the exact tension at the heart of the modern knowledge economy. You are highlighting the conflict between perceived responsiveness and actual value creation.
No. Okay. Tell me more about that distinction.
Our sources address this by drawing a very rigid boundary between two modes of operation, shallow work and deep work. What you are describing, the high-speed routing, the instant replies, the plate spinning that is categorized entirely as shallow work.
Even if that plate spinning is keeping a multi-million-dollar client temporarily satisfied.
Yes. Because we have to look at the cognitive depth of the action, not just its immediate diplomatic outcome.
I see.
Shallow work consists of non-cognitive, logistical, or administrative tasks that can generally be performed while you are in a state of partial distraction.
Like replying to a routine inquiry.
Right. Or organizing digital files, attending standard status updates, tweaking the formatting on a PowerPoint deck. These tasks are necessary for the basic functioning of a business, much like changing the oil in a car is necessary. But changing the oil does not design a better engine.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. The danger, then, is that we've allowed the metrics of shallow work to become the primary metrics of our professional self-worth. Like, if I clear 100 emails in an hour, I feel this massive artificial surge of accomplishment.
And it is a dangerous illusion of productivity. What's happening is we're applying industrial-age factory metrics where producing 100 widgets is objectively better than producing 50 widgets to knowledge work.
But emails aren't widgets.
Exactly. In knowledge work, sending 100 emails does not equate to value creation. Shallow work merely keeps you treading the operational waters. It prevents you from sinking, but it does absolutely nothing to propel you forward.
And it comes at a severe biological cost, too. Let's look at what is physically happening in our neural circuitry when we attempt to execute our core competencies while simultaneously monitoring all these shallow communication channels.
The colloquial term being multitasking.
Right, which we all confidently list on our resumes like it's a superpower, but the literature is brutally definitive on this.
Oh, it is. Multitasking, in the context of complex cognitive function, is a physiological impossibility.
Literally impossible.
Literally.
Yeah.
The human brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, which handles executive function and complex problem-solving, operates essentially as a sequential processor. It simply cannot process two high-level cognitive demands simultaneously.
So when someone claims, I'm writing a strategic proposal while actively monitoring my Slack channel and listening to a quarterly earnings call, they are fundamentally mistaken about their own brain activity.
They are not engaged in parallel processing at all. They're engaged in what neurologists call context switching.
Context switching.
Yes. They are rapidly, violently pivoting their cognitive spotlight back and forth between the proposal, the chat interface, and the audio input.
It's like reading 3 different complex novels by reading one paragraph from the first book, jumping to a paragraph in the second, jumping to the third, and then returning to the first.
That sounds exhausting.
Right. You aren't reading 3 books at once. You're just fracturing your comprehension into these microscopic, disjointed shards.
And that fracturing creates immense friction in the brain. The human brain does not switch contexts with the seamless efficiency of a silicon microchip. There is a very real metabolic and cognitive toll extracted during every single transition.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the research highlighted in our sources, most notably the foundational studies conducted by researchers like Gloria Mark at UC Irvine, it quantifies this friction in a deeply alarming way.
Oh, this is the data point that fundamentally restructures how you view a normal workday.
Seriously.
So the studies utilize heart rate monitors, software tracking, and behavioral observation to really measure the impact of interruptions. And they found that when a knowledge worker is engaged in a complex cognitive task and experiences a disruption, even a seemingly trivial one, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return to the original task with the same level of deep focus and cognitive momentum.
Wait, 23 minutes?
23 minutes and 15 seconds.
I want that to fully register for you listening right now. Let's say you're deep into coding a piece of software or analyzing a complex financial model, and you hear the familiar chime of your email.
Just a single chime.
Right. You pull yourself out of the code, you open the inbox, you read a 3-sentence email about scheduling a meeting, you decide you'll answer it later, and you go back to your code.
A very standard interaction.
That interaction took maybe 15 seconds of physical time, but the biological penalty you just incurred is 23 minutes of compromised cognitive function. That is wild.
It is. And to understand why the penalty is so severe, we have to look at a concept called attention residue, which has been explored extensively by researcher Sophie Leroy.
Attention residue.
Yeah. When you pivot your attention from task A to task B, your brain does not instantaneously sever its connection to task A. A portion of your cognitive resources, essentially your working memory, remains anchored to the previous context.
Oh, it's like leaving several heavy applications running in the background of your computer. The CPU is bogged down, so the application you're actually trying to use starts lagging and freezing up.
Exactly. Your brain is subconsciously chewing on that unanswered email, analyzing its social implications, deciding when to schedule the meeting, all while you're actively trying to write code.
So it's divided.
Deeply divided. This attention residue splits your processing power. You are attempting to do heavy cognitive lifting while effectively operating with a significant drop in your IQ.
Okay, so let's do the math on this. If the cognitive penalty is roughly 23 minutes and the average corporate employee is switching contexts, checking an inbox, glancing at a phone, reading a chat message every 5 to 6 minutes,
Which is standard.
then mathematically, the modern knowledge worker is functioning in a state of perpetual cognitive impairment. They literally never cross the 23-minute threshold required to reach maximum intellectual capacity.
That is the grim mathematical reality we're dealing with. If you are constantly switching contexts, you literally never experience your brain operating at its peak potential. Your daily output is just the product of an exhausted, fragmented mind.
And physiologically, this takes a toll too, right?
Oh, massively. This constant shifting spikes cortisol levels, increasing your overall allostatic load, which entirely explains that profound, hollow exhaustion you feel at 5:00 p.m. despite having produced no meaningful deep work.
We are voluntarily driving high-performance sports cars in first gear, constantly yanking the emergency brake and then wondering why the engine is smoking and we haven't reached our destination.
It's tragic, really.
So what does this all mean? If the attention economy is the trap and context switching is the mechanism of our intellectual decline, what is the life raft? How do we rebuild our capacity for deep, meaningful output?
The antidote to this entire paradigm is the concept of deep work. As articulated by author Cal Newport, deep work was not just a vague aspiration to try a little harder.
It's not just, I'm going to focus today.
No, it is a highly specific, rigorous state of functioning. It's defined as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their absolute limit.
Distraction-free and pushing to the limit. I mean, this isn't just closing the office door and leisurely answering emails. This is active cognitive strain.
Yes, and the strain is the mechanism of growth. To understand the value proposition of deep work, why it matters so much, we have to briefly touch on the neuroscience of skill acquisition.
Okay, let's get into the biology.
When you focus intensely on a complex task, you are isolating specific neural circuits in your brain. As these circuits fire repeatedly in a state of deep concentration, your brain responds by wrapping the axons of those neurons in a fatty tissue called myelin.
Myelin, so it acts like insulation on an electrical wire.
Precisely. The myelin sheath prevents the electrical impulses from leaking, which allows the signals to fire faster and much more efficiently. This process of myelination is the biological foundation of mastery.
It's how you actually get good at things.
It is how an amateur becomes an expert. But here is the critical point. All good dendrocytes, the cells that actually trigger myelination, they require an environment of intense, uninterrupted focus to function optimally.
Wow. So when we operate in a state of constant distraction, we are biologically preventing our brains from physically upgrading their own hardware. We literally cannot build deep skills while context switching.
We're short-circuiting our own growth.
Yeah.
And that neurobiological reality creates a profound economic reality. Deep work is the specific type of labor that creates new, substantial value.
Right.
It is the work that solves complex structural problems, generates innovative strategies, and produces insights that cannot be easily replicated by an algorithm or just outsourced to a cheaper labor market.
If we look at the broader economy, shallow work is essentially maintaining the scaffolding of a building. It's tightening the bolts, filing the permits, sweeping the site. It's necessary, but it does not result in a new skyscraper.
Beautifully put.
Thanks. Deep work is the actual architectural design of the load-bearing walls. But the tragedy here is that we are compensating highly skilled architects, but demanding they spend 85% of their day responding to Slack messages about the scaffolding.
And in a global economy where artificial intelligence and automation are rapidly commoditizing all those logistical and administrative tasks, the ability to perform deep work is becoming the defining competitive advantage.
It's the only thing AI can't do yet.
Right. The people who can sit in a room without a phone and concentrate fiercely on a complex problem for 3 hours, they're going to possess a superpower simply because the behavior has become exceedingly rare.
Okay, I enthusiastically grasp the immense value of this superpower, both biologically and economically. But we have to address a massive flashing red reality check here.
The real-world roadblocks.
Exactly. We can talk about myelination and Carl Jung's distraction-free writing towers all day long, but you and I and our listeners do not live in 1920s Swiss towers. We live in corporate hierarchies.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the organizational friction is formidable.
Yes. We know we should work deeply, but the reality is the sheer anxiety induced by the green activity dot on our company's messaging software.
Oh, the green dot.
Right. If that dot goes gray for more than 20 minutes, the implicit assumption in a lot of toxic or hyper-connected cultures is that you are slacking off. The panopticon of the modern open office, whether it's physical or digital, demands constant visibility.
It does.
So how on earth do you practically implement a sanctuary for deep work without alienating your colleagues, angering your manager, or just committing professional sabotage?
Well, the organizational hurdle is huge, but it is not insurmountable. The fundamental error we have made in corporate culture is equating visibility with productivity and instant responsiveness with professional dedication.
We think fast replies equal hard work.
Right. Fixing this requires a deliberate strategic shift toward asynchronous communication.
Now, I know our audience understands the literal definition of asynchronous work, sending a message and not expecting an immediate real-time response. But the friction isn't in understanding the concept. The friction is in the cultural implementation.
Right. Changing the habits of the people around you.
Exactly. How do you train a manager who is entirely addicted to immediate replies to accept an asynchronous workflow?
You don't start by demanding a philosophical shift from your manager. You start by implementing rigid boundaries through a practice called time blocking, and you combine that with radical proactive transparency.
Proactive transparency.
Yes, because the anxiety managers feel usually stems from a lack of visibility, not a genuine need for an instantaneous answer. They just want to know that you are engaged.
So if I just vanished for 3 hours to write a report, their brain perceives my absence as a threat to the workflow.
Exactly. So you preempt the threat, you evaluate your week, and you fiercely protect specific blocks of time. Let's say Tuesday and Thursday mornings from 9:00 a.m. to 11:00 are your dedicated deep work blocks. You do not treat these as vague intentions. You treat them as immovable, high-priority meetings with your own prefrontal cortex.
And what happens to the communication channels during those 2 hours? Do I just ignore them?
You sever them entirely. You close the email client. And, close it, not just minimize, shut it down. You toggle your messaging apps to do not disturb or log out entirely.
That sounds terrifying.
It feels risky, but the crucial step that prevents professional fallout is the communication that precedes the block. You make your absence hyper-transparent.
Give me an example of what that proactive transparency actually sounds like in practice.
You set a clear status message and perhaps send a brief note to your core team, something like, I'm going off the grid from 9:00 to 11:00 a.m. for deep, focused work on the Q3 strategic analysis. I will not be monitoring email or chat.
Simple, direct.
Right. And you add an escape hatch. If a literal fire arises that threatens a client account, call my cell phone. Otherwise, I will review all messages and respond promptly at 11:30.
Okay, by doing that, you completely neutralize the anxiety of the green dot. Your team isn't wondering if you're ignoring them out of negligence. They know precisely what you are doing, why you're doing it, and exactly when they will hear back from you.
You've managed their expectations.
You've basically built a moat around your cognitive resources, but you've left a drawbridge for actual, literal emergencies.
And you will quickly discover a very fascinating truth about modern business. Almost nothing is an actual emergency.
Oh, so true.
The vast majority of the urgent pings we receive are simply the result of someone else's disorganized thought process. They had a thought, and they immediately pushed it onto your plate to relieve their own cognitive load.
We've been deeply conditioned to confuse the urgent with the important. A pinging notification inherently feels urgent because our biological threat detection system is triggered by the noise. But rarely is a Slack message about, a font choice actually important.
Never.
We have to stop letting other people's manufactured urgency dictate our capacity to execute important work.
And over time, as you consistently produce higher quality work because you are protecting your focus, your management structure will implicitly adapt to your boundaries. The undeniable quality of the deep work becomes its own justification.
Okay, I am entirely sold on the professional logistics. Time blocking, proactive transparency, neutralizing the green dot, it makes total sense. But I have to confess something, and I guarantee almost everyone listening to this has experienced this exact phenomenon.
Oh boy, what is it?
Even when I execute the logistics flawlessly, even when I close the door, shut down the email, put my phone away, and stare at the blank document I need to work on, my own brain rebels.
It fights back.
Yes. It is a profoundly uncomfortable experience. I get physically twitchy. I feel a surging, almost painful sense of boredom and restlessness. Fixing the boss's expectations is one thing, but fixing my own brain is another.
Well, you are describing the internal hurdle, which is significantly harder to conquer than the organizational one.
You aren't just feeling restless.
What is it then? When you remove the constant algorithmic stimulation and sit in silence with a cognitively demanding task, the physical discomfort you feel is literally the manifestation of dopamine withdrawal.
Wait, really? It sounds hyperbolic to compare checking a social feed to a substance dependency. But neurobiologically, the mechanics are alarmingly parallel, aren't they?
They are completely parallel. Because we have existed for years inside the attention economy, constantly pulling that slot machine lever, our brains have undergone a process called downregulation.
Downregulation, meaning what?
Meaning the baseline level of neurological noise and stimulation we require just to feel normal is historically unprecedented. We are flooded with cheap, low-effort dopamine all day long. So when you suddenly enter a deep work block and cut off that supply, your brain chemistry literally crashes.
So your brain starts actively hunting for the chemical hit it has come to expect. It's why I'll be 5 minutes into writing a difficult paragraph, hit a slight intellectual roadblock, and my hand will unconsciously reach for the phone in my pocket.
It's totally autonomic.
Right. It's a reflex to escape the friction of the difficult task.
The brain is conserving energy. Deep work burns a tremendous amount of glucose and requires immense metabolic effort. Scrolling a feed requires almost zero effort and provides an instant chemical reward.
So it's taking the easy way out.
Always. Your brain will always intuitively advocate for the path of least metabolic resistance. To succeed at deep work, you have to consciously override that survival mechanism. And that requires us to systematically reacclimate our brains to a state we have almost entirely eradicated from modern life. Boredom.
Oh man, boredom. We have declared a total war on boredom. It is truly an endangered state of being.
We avoid it at all costs.
We really do. If you analyze a normal day, we have aggressively sterilized every micro moment of potential idleness. We cannot stand at an elevator for 12 seconds without staring at a screen.
No, impossible.
We pull out our phones while waiting in line to buy coffee, while stopped at a red light, while waiting for the kettle to boil. We have zero tolerance for the absence of input.
And that total eradication of idleness is catastrophic for our intellectual health. Because boredom is not a bug in the human system. It is a critical feature.
A feature.
Yes. When you remove external stimuli and allow yourself to be bored, your brain does not simply shut down. It activates a specific neural network known as the default mode network, or DMN.
The DMN. That was discovered somewhat accidentally, right? During those early fMRI studies in the 2000s, researchers like Marcus Rachel told subjects to just do nothing between tasks, expecting the brain to go quiet.
Exactly. And instead, they saw this massive coordinated network light up across the brain. The default mode network is highly active during moments of wakeful rest, daydreaming, and mind wandering.
So it's busy when we think it's off.
Highly busy. This is the state where the brain performs essential background maintenance. It consolidates memories, it processes complex emotional experiences, and most importantly for our context, it engages in associative thinking.
Associative thinking meaning it starts connecting disparate pieces of information that your conscious mind hasn't linked yet.
Yes. The DMN reaches into different archives of your memory and experience and begins linking nodes that seem totally unrelated. This is the physiological origin of the eureka moment.
Oh, wow.
It is exactly why you struggle with a complex problem at your desk for 4 hours, make absolutely no progress, give up, take a shower, and suddenly the perfect solution materializes in your head out of nowhere.
The shower. It's one of the only places left where we haven't figured out how to bring our phones yet. So the DMN is doing the subconscious heavy lifting while we're rinsing off.
But the DMN cannot activate if the cognitive bandwidth is entirely consumed by external input. If you immediately fill every moment of idleness with a podcast, a YouTube video, or a Twitter thread, you never grant your brain the silent space required to synthesize what you've learned.
We are suffocating our own creativity and our own eureka moments under an avalanche of TikToks and Twitter threads. We're consuming such a massive volume of external information that we literally do not have the internal quiet necessary to generate an original thought. We are confusing consumption with cognition.
Which raises an important question. If our neurobiology has been so deeply compromised by this environment and we are addicted to the noise, how do we begin the rehabilitation process? How do we rebuild our cognitive stamina?
Our sources prescribe a methodology that revolves around digital minimalism, paired with a highly structured regimen of cognitive physiotherapy. And I want to be very careful with the term minimalism here, because it often conjures up images of, like, austere deprivation.
Right, living in a cabin in the woods.
Exactly. But it's not that.
No. Digital minimalism is not a Luddite philosophy. It does not advocate for throwing your laptop into the sea and communicating via carrier pigeon. Technology is entirely morally neutral. It is merely a lever.
The issue is whether you are pulling the lever or the lever is pulling you.
Beautifully stated. Digital minimalism is about moving from a state of passive consumption to a state of ruthless intentionality.
It requires running every digital habit through a very strict utility filter.
You must subject your tools to a brutal honesty test. You look at an app, a platform, or a habit, and you ask yourself, is this tool providing salient, irreplaceable value to my core professional or personal goals? Or is it merely acting as a psychological pacifier to numb the discomfort of my own thoughts?
It's the difference between, say, Using Twitter to track a fast-moving geopolitical crisis relevant to your field versus mindlessly scrolling the feed for an hour because you don't want to start writing a difficult email. The platform is the same, but the intention is entirely different.
Once you have stripped away the pacifiers, you are left with the silence. And you have to start training your brain to endure the effort of deep work without the crutch of distraction.
Which is painful at first.
It is. But the reward on the other side of this effort, the reason we endure the initial pain of withdrawal, is the attainment of the flow state.
The concept of flow, pioneered by the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, it's often described in almost mystical terms by athletes and artists, right? The runner's high, being in the zone. But it's a deeply grounded neurological phenomenon.
It is a state of transient hypofrontality.
Transient hypofrontality.
Yes. When you are fully immersed in a task that perfectly matches your high skill level with a high degree of challenge, the prefrontal cortex essentially downregulates its self-monitoring functions.
The inner critic turns off.
Exactly. Your sense of time distorts. The boundary between yourself and the task dissolves. You're no longer forcing your focus. The momentum of the work is just pulling you forward.
The psychic entropy vanishes. You are operating at the absolute peak of human cognitive capability, and ironically, it feels effortless once you cross the threshold. It's one of the most profoundly rewarding psychological experiences possible.
It truly is.
So how do we practically get our listeners across that threshold? What is the homework?
Okay, the most dangerous mistake you can make after hearing this is to attempt to execute 4 hours of deep work tomorrow morning.
Because your brain will simply refuse. You will fail and get completely demoralized.
It will snap back like an overstretched rubber band. Your attention span is an atrophied muscle. If you walk into a gym after 5 years of sedentary living and attempt to deadlift 400 pounds, you will fail. You will injure yourself. And the psychological defeat will ensure you never return to the gym.
Start small.
We have to start with a very lightweight. The practical step from the sources is what we call the 45-minute challenge.
One single block of 45 minutes. That seems almost remarkably small, but I know the friction involved makes it feel like an eternity. Let's break down the exact parameters of the 45-minute challenge for the listeners.
Parameter 1. Select a single high cognitive demand task, not a list of shallow tasks. One complex problem to solve, one document to draft, one model to build.
Got it, just one thing.
Parameter 2, and this is entirely non-negotiable. Your smartphone must be placed in a completely different room.
Let me stop you there because I know people are thinking, I'll just put it face down on my desk or I'll put it on airplane mode. Why is the physical removal to another room so critical?
Because of the brain drain effect. Studies have consistently demonstrated that even the mere physical presence of a smartphone within your peripheral vision, even if it is turned off, drains your cognitive capacity.
Because your brain still recognizes its presence as a potential portal to dopamine.
Exactly. Subconsciously, your brain is dedicating a portion of its processing power to actively inhibiting the urge to pick it up. You are burning glucose just to ignore the phone on your desk. Remove it from the room entirely so your brain doesn't have to spend energy resisting it.
Okay, that makes so much sense. The phone is in another room. Parameter 3.
Parameter 3. Close every single non-essential browser tab, application, and window on your computer that is not strictly required for the specific task at hand. You want to eliminate any visual trigger that could initiate context switching.
And then the timer starts. And this is where the cognitive physiotherapy begins. Because I know from experience, about 7 or 8 minutes into that 45-minute block, the friction will spike.
The urge will hit.
The task will get slightly difficult and the brain will just panic. I have literally experienced phantom vibrations in my pocket, feeling a phone buzz that isn't even in the room just because my brain was so desperate for an interruption.
That urge to flee the friction is an autonomic response.
Mm-hmm.
The physiotherapy lies in what you do when the urge to distract arises.
What do you do?
The goal is not to berate yourself for feeling distracted. The goal is mindfulness. You simply observe the urge. You acknowledge it. I am feeling the desire to escape this task. And then you deliberately, gently pull your focus back to the work.
No, I love that analogy. It is quite literally meditation for your professional life. It's the rehabilitation of an atrophied muscle. The distraction is inevitable. The actual strengthening of the neural pathway happens in the moment you choose to return to the focus rather than indulge the urge.
Every time you notice the distraction and pivot back to the complex task, you are physically reinforcing the myelin around those circuits of concentration. You are building the physiological infrastructure of focus.
It's easier, right?
If you practice this daily, 45 minutes will soon feel effortless. You will expand it to an hour, then 90 minutes. Over time, you will rebuild a capacity to regularly access that euphoric flow state and produce work that operates the very ceiling of your potential.
This has been a profoundly dense, paradigm-shifting deep dive. We have charted the biological mechanisms of our distraction and the structural solutions for reclaiming our minds. Let's synthesize the critical concepts you, the listener, need to carry forward.
The foundational takeaway is understanding the biological fallacy of multitasking. You're never doing two things at once. You're engaging in context switching, and you are paying a massive cognitive penalty upwards of 23 minutes every single time you allow your attention to fracture.
And to combat the illusion of productivity, you must actively differentiate between the administrative treading of water and actual value creation. You have to prioritize deep work.
And you execute that within a corporate environment by implementing rigid time blocking, utilizing proactive transparency, and steering your team toward asynchronous communication.
Right. Internally, you must embark on the uncomfortable process of digital minimalism. Strip away the algorithmic pacifiers, subject your tools to the brutal honesty test, and learn to cultivate boredom so your default mode network can resume its critical function of synthesizing complex thought.
Articulating and applying these concepts does more than just improve your output. It empowers you to view your own cognitive capacity as your most valuable asset. It gives you the vocabulary to negotiate better working conditions and reclaim your intellectual autonomy.
You are systematically rebuilding the walls of the vault. Before we close out, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought experiment to mull over on your own. It's a projection that wasn't explicitly drawn out in the specific sources we covered, but it is the inescapable logical terminus of the trends we've analyzed today.
Let's follow the trajectory.
We have established that deep work is essentially the only mechanism that creates complex, hard-to-replicate value in an increasingly automated world. We have also established that the vast majority of society, thoroughly captured by the attention economy, is losing the biological capacity to perform deep work.
The atrophy is widespread.
So, if those two lines continue to diverge, what does the global economy look like in 10 or 15 years? Will the global economy be rigidly divided into a tiny fraction of deep workers who create everything and own everything, and a massive distracted majority who just click the buttons they are given?
It implies a radical cognitive stratification, a stark, chilling projection. But given the neurobiological data, it is an entirely plausible reality. The separation is already happening.
The ultimate question you must confront today is, when that divide fully solidifies, which side of it do you want to be on?
The architecture of your brain is still plastic.
Yeah.
The choice is still entirely within your control.
Thank you for spending your time and your focus with us on this deep dive. We challenge you to execute the 45-minute challenge today. Embrace the discomfort. Build the sanctuary. And remember, that empty space in your head where your attention used to be is not gone forever. You can reclaim it one focused, deeply intentional moment at a time. We'll catch you on the next one.